Blessed be y'all, this is Jen Fremont. This may seem a little bit off the subject that I usually do, but ties into my previous video. And I'm going to talk about camping because being someone who has worked with nature and the earth, for many years my default belief system was I would say modern American neo-pagan, and I went on a pagan camp out week before last, and I was just thinking about if folks had not ever been camping, or they only camped when they were a child, so they don't really know all the stuff about it and how to get started and things like that. And there's nothing like actually going out and sleeping under the stars. Interesting thing. I have a place out in the country, and it is pretty far from. It's about 10 miles from the nearest small town. And I went out there one time, and the sun had already set, so it wasn't any direct sun. And I set up my camp, and it was a wonderful clear night, so I did not put the rain flap on the tent. And the tent has screen on 3 sides of it. Well, it was a full moon that night. And being out in the middle of nowhere, I'm sleeping naked. There are neighbors around that could see if they had binoculars or whatever, but if they're going to be watching me with binoculars, whatever. I'm half a mile away from the nearest people, and if they want to observe that closely, let them get an iPhone. I don't care. So I ended up with a moonburn. You watch the Addams Family and you see them out there, getting a tan with goose grease in the moonlight. I got a moonburn. I got up the next day and I was toasted. And I know it wasn't because I had gotten there after the sun had set. There was still enough light so I could set up my tent and everything. But yeah, if you're gonna, be aware. If you sleep naked under a full moon, you may wake up red the next day. But anyway, I would say the minimum stuff you need is a small tent. If you're probably going to go with somebody else. If you're a couple, of course, you'll want a tent that will accommodate the both of you. If it's a family or a friend that you're not a couple with, you'll probably need another separate tent for them. But you need a tent, you need a cooler, you need a chair, and a towel. You always need a towel. And I'd gone a few times when I was small, camping out with family and stuff, but of course I was small, and I didn't have to do all the stuff. I could bum around camp, I could fish, I could just do what kids do. And so I didn't know a whole lot about it. Several years ago, though, my mother and I decided we wanted to take a tour of Louisiana and see the sights, see the Civil War stuff and things like that. And we went over to over the top of Louisiana, and then down through Mississippi and over to New Orleans and back through Houston, back up to Dallas. And we camped along the way. A couple of places we stayed in motels, but for the most part we camped. And I got real experience with taking the tent down and up. And people had told me that you better take the tent and set it up at home before you go. Did I do that? No. So I get out there. It was not too hard to figure out, but it would have gone much smoother, especially because this was late summer in Louisiana. It rained every day because it is a swamp, which we didn't even think about. But anyway, we got real accustomed to being able to deal with the rain and everything. And by the end of that trip, I was an expert at taking the tent down and putting it up, and I was also an expert at packing the truck and getting it tarped so stuff didn't get wet. I've usually taken a pickup truck and trash bags. Trash bags are your friend. Anything that you don't want to get wet, you put them in one of those big black trash bags, and if you don't have room in the front, you put that in the back. Put the opening, you tie the thing, get the handle tie one, so the drawstring one, so you can tie them and untie them easily. And then put that little opening part down into the back of the truck. Otherwise, if it does rain, water might get in there. If it's down, yes, the bed can fill up with water, but it's not going to be as bad. And the other thing is, if you face them towards the front, even if you've got it on the bottom, the air tends to try to blow them up. So it's a little bit difficult. I always take a roll of trash bags. I always take gallon size Ziploc bags and quart size Ziploc bags. Because whenever you open a package of food or something like that and you don't eat the whole thing, you're going to want to put it in a bag. If you have any food in your tent, you're going to make sure that you seal it up. Another good tip is cinnamon. Get the cheap ass cinnamon from the dollar store. You can put that around the perimeter of your tent and keep the ants out. I haven't really had that much trouble with ants, to tell you the truth. I usually keep my stuff in bags so it doesn't attract anything. Oh, I did have trouble one year. Somebody left a tuna can behind my tent one time. Yes, that attracted ants badly. In my tent and out, even though I didn't have anything in there. Never did find out who did that to me. But anyway, that was on one of the campouts that I went to. When I first started out, I just took stuff that was cold that I could make sandwiches, chips, cookies, snacky stuff, trail mix, that sort of thing. I would usually take a half gallon of milk with some cereal for in the morning. Of course, you need paper plates, paper styrofoam bowls, and get one of those assortments of plastic knives, forks, and spoons. Whatever condiments you want. Plan your drinks. Figure out how many drinks you're going to drink in a day and make sure you've stocked up. Because if if you're on the road, a lot of times, especially if you like stuff that comes from, like I buy stuff at the Asian store a lot, and it is not usually available other places. And so I got to make sure that I've got it with me. And another cool thing when we were in Louisiana, we stopped at some of these. We were driving some of the back roads, and bought some of their local sausage, their andouille and stuff. Oh my God, that was good. On that trip, I took one of those little propane grills, the small one, and you can also put a pot on that if you want to heat up other stuff. This time when I went camping, I actually bought me a stove, and that was a wonderful experience. The Saturday morning I cooked bacon, and then I sauteed some mushrooms, baby broccoli, and green onions, and cooked some eggs to go with it, and oh, that was good. That was such a wonderful treat in the morning, and it wasn't that difficult once you figure out how to do stuff. But when you're starting out, you don't have to have all the cooking stuff. You don't need to, go out and invest $1,000 worth of stuff. I built my stuff, a piece at a time. The first pagan camp out I went on, I had that tent from 20 years ago that I still had, and I took that with me. I borrowed a cooler, and I did go out and buy me another chair. I had one chair to sit in, and I went and bought a second chair because I figured people would be coming by and talking to me. And that always worked out good because, people would drift by my camp, and it was good to talk to them. They could sit down and have a chat for a little bit. But that's some of the tips that I've found. Trash bags and regular bags, cooler, tent, a couple of chairs, and always take a towel with you, because I always like to have a towel to put over the chair, or if I go out in the woods, sometimes I want someplace that I can lay out my towel and sit down without getting myself too dirty and stuff like that. But that's just kind of my little thing about that. Go out in nature, enjoy nature. It recharges your batteries. It helps your spiritual life immensely to get out of the city and to sleep under the stars. You can see the stars out when you get away from the city lights. It reminds me when I was younger, growing up in Albuquerque. Before they had so many street lights and stuff, you could actually see the stars. And I got to Dallas and I couldn't see the stars. You can see the real bright ones, but that's about it. And you go out in the country and you just see so much. It's beautiful. And the moon is always beautiful. And sometimes, like out on my place there, the mist will roll in, especially in the summertime, because it cools down quite a bit more than it does in the city, and the mist rolls in, and the plants start to breathe, and there's a lot of sage that grows wild out there, and just the fragrance of that is amazing. And it can be a little bit spooky, but it is cool. It is cool to see that. One time I was out there, and it was misty. The fog came in, and then it got misty, and it was a little bit of drizzle and stuff. and the frogs came out. And I mean, it was just about deafening, the frogs. And they were jumping against my tent. And it was pretty cold and wet that night. And the frogs were jumping against the tent. And I didn't get a whole lot of sleep. But, you know, cold and froggy. That's all I can say about that night. And it was memorable. You know, at the time, I was shivering and everything else, but it was good. It was good. You know, even when I've been out and it was just a deluge of rain, I've still had good experiences. And you can't really control the weather and stuff, so just be prepared. It may or may not rain on you, but always be prepared for rain. But that's my stuff about camping. Go out and do it. You'll love it. And this is Jen Fremont. Blessed be y'all.